June is over. And honestly, it was way more packed than I expected. We got big remakes, sports games, co-op chaos, returning franchises, and yeah, even a game about a bean with guns. So today, we're looking at 10 new games released in June 2026 that you can actually play right now. At number 10, we have Kill a Bean. And yeah, this is easily the weirdest game on the list. It is literally a shooter about a bean with guns. But honestly, that is exactly why it stands out. The game is all about fast gunfights, slow-motion action, crazy enemies, and that stupid but fun meme energy. It is not trying to be the biggest or most serious release of June, and that is kind of the point. Sometimes you just want a game that looks chaotic, funny, and completely different from everything else. And Killer Bean definitely has that vibe. So if you want something weird, action-packed, and honestly kind of hilarious, this one might be worth checking out. Platforms, PC, and Steam. At number 9, we have Unrailed 2, back on track. This is a co-op game about building train tracks while everything around you is basically falling apart. It looks simple, but once the chaos starts, it gets really fun. If you like games that are messy, fast, and better with friends, this one is definitely worth a look. Platforms, PC, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch 2. At number 8, we have the 7th Guest Remake. And this one is for people who want something darker and more atmospheric. It is a puzzle horror game set inside a creepy mansion, where every room feels like it is hiding something. This is not really about running around with guns or fighting huge monsters. It is more about mystery, puzzles, weird rooms, and that old-school horror vibe. And honestly, that makes it stand out from the rest of June's releases. If you want a game that is slower, moodier, and more focused on atmosphere than pure action, the 7th Guest Remake could be a really interesting one to try. It is definitely not for everyone, but for horror and puzzle fans. This one might hit the spot. Platforms, PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, with Switch versions coming later.
And if there's one person to solve Stauf's mystery, it will be me. Alone.
This place gives me the creeps.
At number 7, we have Dead or Alive 6 Last Round. And if you just want fast fights, flashy combos, and that classic arcade fighting game energy, this one is pretty easy to understand. It is not trying to be some massive open-world adventure or a deep story game. It is all about jumping straight into the fight, picking your character, and just going for it. The action looks quick, the hits feel stylish, and honestly, fighting games always work well in a list like this because they are super easy to show on screen. If you are into games like Tekken, Street Fighter, or Mortal Kombat, this one might be worth checking out. Platforms, PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. At number 6, we have NBA The Run. And this one is not trying to be a super realistic basketball simulator. It is going for that fast, flashy, street basketball vibe. We are talking quick matches, 3 versus 3 action, big dunks, stylish moves, and that arcade energy that makes sports games way easier to just pick up and play. And honestly, that is why it stands out. Not every sports game needs to be slow, serious, and full of complicated systems. Sometimes you just want to jump in, break someone's ankles, hit a crazy shot, and have fun. If this game gets the movement and the online matches right, NBA The Run could actually be one of the more fun sports releases of June.
Ooh, you know you want to take a photo right now. You made a shot in the Mecca. Looking like a pizza with no scrub.
At number 5, we have EA Sports UFC 6. And if you are into fighting, knockouts, and brutal one-on-one pressure, this is probably one of the most intense games on the list. UFC 6 is all about stepping into the octagon, picking your fighter, and trying to survive every single second. One bad move, one missed block, one clean hit, and suddenly the whole fight can change. That is what makes these games fun to watch and fun to play. It is not just button mashing. You have striking, grappling, stamina, timing, and that constant feeling that anything can happen. And honestly, for a June release list, this gives us something completely different from RPGs, horror games, and arcade sports. If the gameplay feels sharp, the hits feel heavy, and the fighters actually feel unique, UFC 6 could be a really solid pick for people who want pure competitive action.
Setup that allows him to land that strike.
All right, so he has landed a lot of big shots here early. Hasn't gotten them out of there as yet.
No, he hasn't gotten them out of there because the guy's very tough. But these opportunities, you have to take advantage of them. The next time he gets him hurt, he's got to put him out.
All right, so early round one.
At number 4, we have The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. And this one is for people who love that classic adventure RPG feeling, but with a modern look. The game has that beautiful HD 2D style, where everything feels old school, but still super clean and cinematic. You have fantasy locations, monsters, magic, exploration, and that big journey vibe that makes these games so easy to get into. And honestly, this is the kind of game that can look small at first, but then completely pull you in if the world is interesting enough. It is not the loudest release of June, but it might be one of the most charming ones. If you like games with adventure, atmosphere, and that classic Square Enix feeling, this one is definitely worth watching.
I have it! Yeah! Ready? Here we go!
At number 3, we have Star Fox. And this one is here mostly because it is a big name coming back. Star Fox has always had that classic space action vibe with fast flying, lasers, explosions, and that feeling of jumping into an old-school sci-fi arcade game. It is not trying to be some huge realistic shooter. It is more about speed, style, and pure fun. And honestly, that is exactly why people still remember this series. You get in the ship, you start blasting enemies, dodging attacks, flying through crazy locations, and everything is just simple in the best way. If this new version can capture that old Star Fox energy, but make it feel fresh for 2026, then yeah, this could easily be one of the coolest releases of June.
Aim for their heads.
Strange, this tunnel doesn't look natural. Some sizable asteroids coming this way.
At number 2, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And yeah, this one is technically not a completely new game, but for June 2026 it became available to even more players, and that is why it deserves a spot this high. This is a huge cinematic RPG with big story moments, beautiful locations, crazy boss fights, and that classic Final Fantasy mix of emotion, action, and pure spectacle. And honestly, even if you are not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, this game is hard to ignore. It looks expensive, it feels massive, and it has that kind of presentation that instantly makes a video look better. So, yeah, maybe it is not the freshest game on the list, but it is definitely one of the biggest names released in June. At number 1, we have Gothic 1 Remake. This feels like the main RPG release of June. Gothic is one of those old-school games that people still talk about for a reason. It had a rough world, dangerous exploration, weird characters, and that feeling that the game does not care if you are ready or not. The remake is trying to bring all of that back, but with modern visuals, better combat, and a much bigger cinematic feel. And for me, that is why it takes the number 1 spot. It is not just another fantasy game with monsters and swords, it is a remake of a cult classic that a lot of players have been waiting for. If it can keep that harsh, immersive Gothic atmosphere, this could easily be the most important game released in June 2026.